Hello and welcome to The Complex Conversation with me, journalist Helen. This week I'm chatting to the real-life Mrs Patmore. From ostrich eggs to beaks and feet, Downton Abbey food stylist Lisa Heathcote has tackled it all. Lisa was not only a regular above and below stairs at Highclere Castle, making sure the early 20th century fare looked the part, tasted good and was historically accurate. She's worked on many of our favourite dramas, adverts and films, including Coal Mountain, Outlander, The Duchess and Love in a Cold Climate. Lisa was in charge of the food styling on another of my favourite period shows, Bridgerton, and is currently working on the second much-anticipated series for Netflix. And I am feeling really lucky this morning because I'm having coffee and cake in Lisa's kitchen, which I can tell you is a really magical place. Lisa, thank you so much for inviting me here. It's like a little Aladdin's cave of mousse moulds and gadgets and equipment. Can you describe it for us?
Oh my God. Well, yes, it's where I lived most of my life. Every cupboard is crammed, absolutely. I've got a lifetime's collection of moulds. In fact, I started when I was really quite young, before this job even I knew existed. I used to collect little aspic moulds. I mean, obviously, I was destined to be a food stylist, but I've got them from when I was 13. I've always kept them. Despite my travels, moving house, I've always never lost my aspic moulds. So I've got, my cupboard, my big cupboard, which is a bit of a sort of Mary Poppins cupboard that I just cram things in. And it's where we kind of live, and it's tidy at the moment. This is my idea of tidy. But most of the time I sort of come in through the front door, the job comes in, and all my boxes and paraphernalia, everything all just gets dumped on the floor. And then we kind of have supper or whatever is coming round. And we sort of sit, well, you can see on the table, I've got some of my cakes, but that actually it wasn't even art directed. That's just like they'd been plonked there and I'd forgotten. I thought, oh, well, I'll leave those. That's all right. That looks okay for you to see. But yeah, I mean, my poor children, I mean, they're grown up now, but they'd come home from school and the table might be sort of groaning with chocolate eclairs or something, sort of 100 chocolate eclairs for a job. They were only allowed to look at it because it was going to go for a job. As they grew up, the sentence was, Mummy, is this food we can eat or food that we have to look at? And their friends would come back and they'd sort of, their eyes would light up and they'd say, sorry, you can't have any. This is for a job. No, you're not allowed to touch.
Hysterical. It's the moulds that have really caught my attention. You've got beautiful copper moulds on a shelf in your kitchen. I wonder what was it with that fascination at a young age with those kinds of things? I've always liked a blancmange mould.
Yes, just something about the intricacies of the mould and the work that's gone into it. And I mean, that's, over the years, wherever I go, I mean, I drive my other half completely mad. If we're just anywhere in the countryside, just gonna pop in here and see if I can find something interesting, some kitchen ephemera, and in a sort of junk shop or, Oxfam or, charity shops, because they're a kind of rich source, and I'm happy, up to my elbows in all sorts of stuff, just trying to find something. And that's, it's great in the countryside. I grew up in the countryside, but fabulous when people years ago, people would be getting rid of ice cream molds, which were these pewter ones. I've got some over there. I'll show you later. And they're just so boring looking because they're just pewter lumps, but you open them up because they're hinged and they'd be sort of fruits and things. And this is what the Victorians, they make their ice cream and make these beautiful little fruits, which are wonderful. And so for films, obviously I can't do ice cream because that would be a complete road to hell.
That wouldn't work with the lights.
No, that would be absolute nightmare. But I make them out of marzipan or, dare I say, like kind of fondant icing or something and just colour them up and then pile them up. And it's art, I guess. I do food that is sort of art, if you like, but it's a hybrid. I'm part of Set Deck. So the process is the script comes in for whatever production it is, and we tease out where the food is and what it might be. And then I've got to, if it's an historical piece like Bridgerton although that's very loose, which is great because I can be off. Lisa goes large. as Gina.
Oh, that's the beauty of Bridgerton,
This is Lisa goes large. You can just go with it, Lisa. But Downton is much more tight. We've got to be very, very historically accurate. So I've got to think about the food being historical. And I also do contemporary food. I've been doing Ted Lasso, so that's contemporary. And I do occasionally have this sort of nightmare days where I wake up and I think, is it is it the chicken pie or is it the mousse? Where am I going today? What century am I in? So we decide what the food is. And then, of course, I've got to create it. And then sometimes it might be scripted that Mrs. Patmore takes the chicken leg off or slices the chicken leg off the chicken. So if you imagine, you can't just cook one chicken because there's going to be 25 takes. I then try and have a conversation to persuade them not to cut the chicken leg off. Or the slicing the cake. Slicing the cake is always, we're just about to do a Bridgerton slice the cake. I cannot tell you. I mean, we're slicing some cake and all the paraphernalia. We've just got to we're going to make about 28. So we've got a huge, I don't think I'm spoiling, I'm saying we've got a large cake, should I say, for a specific purpose. And we're having to cheat it. So most of the cake is not real, but the bottom bit of the cake, which is like a little round satellite cake, is real. So I'm just going to have to keep putting that in. They take a slice, take it out, put another real cake in and sort of decorate it with flowers. And hopefully we can get away with that.
So you'll make a number of satellite cakes and just keep replacing the real bit. Yes.
So hopefully that's in a couple of weeks' time. So I'm sort of building up to that one. That's because I've got to do all the moulding exactly the same as the big cake. And that was a model maker made the big cake. And so it's all lots and lots of meetings to talk about bits and edging and filigree work. And, have you got this mould and is this going to work? So it gets a bit complicated.
What I loved about Bridgerton is the way Bridgerton has gone a bit wild. I love all the fancy costumes and how it's not your traditional period drama. Yeah. So I could imagine Lisa goes wild.
Which has been fun because I'm working with a lot of people that I work with on Bridgerton and we sort of moved on. Downton. And so the constraints, which had its joy with Downton, to be so historically accurate, so much thought went into that. Because on the Downton food, we had food below stairs very much with Mrs. Patmore that we then would have to see upstairs, which would probably be, maybe we'd film it the other way around. Maybe we'd film them eating upstairs, the meal, and then 6 weeks later, we would be filming that meal being prepared by Mrs. Patmore downstairs. So then I've got to break down all those components. I have to do lots and lots of photographs for continuity. And then in the script, we'd sort of work out where she was in preparing the dinner or the lunch or wherever it was. So everything that they did in the kitchen was never random. It always fitted in time to what was going on upstairs. So it used to get so complicated because I'd then have to kind of dream up things that Mrs. Patmore's got to do, who Leslie would openly admit she's not a cook.
She's not.
No, she's not a natural wooden spoon holder or knife holder. It doesn't come naturally. So
she looks it. I suppose she's an actress, but she looks at you. Obviously, have you helped her with it?
Yes. So she'd say, what am I doing? I would maybe just for simplicity say I would have done like 20 little tarts or something and put them all on the table. And then there'll be just 3 that she's going to fill. And then the viewer would make the jump between, Mrs. Patmore's done all those tarts. She's actually doing one simple action, which is maybe putting the grape on that tart just there. And so we imagine that she's done all the other work. Of course, she hasn't. And then, I'd sort of, because we worked together for years.
Yes, because you've been on Downton since the beginning.
Yeah, from day one when I got an email from Gina, who's the set decorator, saying, could you keep February clear for a nice little period drama? We didn't know what we were letting ourselves in for.
Oh my goodness, who would have thought it would be so successful in so many series?
It was, I remember day one, pinning in the grapes and cooking bacon, which hadn't been discussed in the buttery. So the entire sort of house of Highclere smelt of cooked bacon because we were doing this scene, bacon and egg. So they were none too happy, actually. So from that moment, I was asked to cook my bacon in the car park outside. So from that day forward, I was always outside, which is probably a better thing, actually, because the buttery was a long way from the dining room. And obviously my bacon skills are not very high. So wafts of bacon in the drapes wasn't good. So I would be then outside. And Highclere has its own sort of microclimate, which is freezing. I mean, it's the front is north facing.
Oh,
so in the winter, it would be sort of like 5, up to 10 below, I think, one winter. So we had this one barking moment when, I'd get there and we had to do, I remember, because the script would be, the veal chops are rather large. So obviously that means I've got to get large veal chops because it's scripted and I've got to cook them and their actors are going to eat them as well. So I've got to get a lot, and I'm in my easy up on the north face of the house, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning and the snow's coming down. And the gravy froze in the gravy boat.
No.
And the peas froze in the tureen. As we're putting, it was that cold. It was just literally, as I put any water or anything, it just froze up. So it was absolute madness. I cannot tell you. Eventually, I was kind of given a truck.
How nice of them.
And then, yes, because we had to do souffles. I think I did a film of my souffle in the film.
A souffle? Now, that must be really tricky to do a souffle for telly.
A souffle for telly. Not only that, it's got to get from my truck across the North Frozen car park, through the door, through the hall, and into the dining room. So I just kept batch cooking them because I wouldn't know how long the take would be. You've got a rough idea, but it might take slightly longer. So I don't know whether my souffles are going to rise perfectly. The main thing is they don't want to wait for you. They're not going to wait for the souffle because it's about the drama. I'm a bit of props, basically. I'm edible props.
Edible prop.
I'm an edible prop. So they're not going to be particularly happy if they've got to wait for me to take the souffles out the oven. So I just kept cooking. I had an assistant and we just kept going all morning making these souffles. And then if the time happened that they'd finish the scene and then we could run through with the next lot of souffles and plonk them on the table and we'd sort of get away with it. But we'd have to run through all the jennies, all these enormous great big trucks with all the electrics. And so we'd be sort of squeezing past there with our trays of souffles and running through the door. It's never straightforward. People kind of don't understand the nature of how difficult it is to get the food there. It was sort of like the beginning of this week, we were in Goldsmiths Hall. And of course, it's just negotiating the stairs and the parking water. I mean, the film company makes space for you, but you've still got to get all your stuff out, up the stairs, in a space, set up, create the thing, dress it in, and then leave and not spill it on the carpet.
Also, doesn't it? Actually, talking about spilling of the carpet, I've got to share a very brief story with you. My mum used to make baked Alaska every Christmas Day.
Ooh.
Because as children, we didn't really like Christmas pudding, which now I've realised was amazing, her Christmas pudding.
Yeah.
And she used to make baked Alaska, and with the sort of ice cream in the middle and the meringue outside, flash bake it.
Yeah.
She'd hide a little eggshell in the top and put some alcohol in it and light it.
Yeah,
and I'll never forget one Christmas day when we're all sitting there crammed around the table in our little dining room, and Mum tripped and it slipped off and it just splodged on the carpet. And I sort of, when I was prepping this interview, I was thinking of you, thinking, God, I wonder if you ever have any calamities and you've just made something wonderful and then you trip over a camera cable or something.
Oh yeah, no, I've done that.
Have you done that?
Oh my God, yeah, I actually did it. But thank God it was after the scene. I was picking everything up. I think it was trifles and things. And I tripped over, actually, one of the sandbags, which is at the front there, propping my front door open. I kind of got it as a memento. They have sandbags to weigh things down so the lights don't fall over and things. And down I went, and all I could see was the leather wallpaper coming towards me of Highclere. And I'm thinking, do I save myself or do I save the wallpapers? And I actually saved the wallpaper. So I just went down like a ton of bricks, and most of it went over me because I just went down with everything. And I got away with it. So thank God that was okay. But one of my worst problems often on set, and especially at Highclere, dogs. I go to a lot of fabulous houses. It's a great job because I go to a lot of stately homes because I do a lot of period dramas. So I go to the sort of great stately homes. So of course there's always the family routine and there's always a dog. There's always a dog or lots of dogs. So that's my main problem is I've kind of put something down where I might be working. And then I find that somebody's got their nose in it. So we were supposed to be doing this banquet. So I had lots of huge joints of ham and beef and pies and all things meaty and delicious. And it's sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning because you have to start really early. And I'm standing there and the Hunt puppies were being taken for a walk, and I can see coming around the corner and across the lawn rather a lot of dogs.
Oh, no.
And they see me and I see them.
And they smell you.
And they came bounding up the lawn. I was sort of literally standing there with my arms out, like to do rugby tackles, trying to beat them off the field. And thank God it was extraordinary that my lovely art department arrived all at the same time. And we were like a kind of set of complete mad women, throwing ourselves on the beef, go, get off! And fortunately, we managed to say, I think one Labrador ran off with a joint, but we managed to, fortunately, they weren't eating it. So this was just literally set decorating. So I just had to sort of cover over the teeth marks, just sort of a lot of flat leaf parsley and a bit of paint and plonked it on the table, and we got away with it, and nobody was eating it. It was literally just a sort of reference in the script. Doesn't this look wonderful? I think it was the Shirley MacLaine picnic.
It's like a military operation what you do, because you've got to work out what's being eaten, what's not being eaten.
Yes.
What will survive the lights and what won't survive the lights.
Yeah.
And what are the secrets of the trade when, they're doing lots of takes and you've got something that still has to look good throughout the shoot?
Well, the one thing, we used to do this thing called chicken fish or fishy chicken, because it was always being scripted salmon mousse or salmon, lovely salmon. Well, of course, the one thing you don't want on set is fish, because it just gets really smelly and really unpleasant. So I've got to cheat that. So I've managed to get a great recipe together, which is like cream cheese and lemon, and then I colour it. Then I can do 101 things with cream cheese and a bit of colour. I tell you, and it's delicious, darling, absolutely delicious. If I make my jellies, they're inedible, frankly, because I just have to put so much gelatine in. So I set them like rock, and I can get about 3 days out of them, and then, which is fine, yeah.
So don't touch jelly in your kitchen. If you're arriving or not home, don't go
touch
to the jelly.
Don't touch it. So what you do is, we have a fabulous looking shimmering jelly that's out of my mould. And actually, the jelly that would have come out of those moulds in Victorian period would have been set quite hard, because they're using calves' hooves. We tend to buy gelatine now, and we're used to these wonderful soft sets, all these lovely panna cotta that just gently wobble and they're all very light. They were making gelatine with calves' hooves, so it was a much firmer set. So, which is why I think, they were able to kind of get things out of these jelly molds. I'm slightly doing that, but taking it a bit further. So mine are like rock, basically, and they bounce. And I have you're asking about dropping things. I have dropped a few jellies in my time.
Do you have to be careful with the costumes and with actors and costumes?
Yes. Oh, God, yes. That is a big, big thing. Another thing about what they're eating, and then sometimes it's scripted that they have an accident and it's got to land on their knee. And then it might be scripted that the fish lands on their knee. We did have that again, going back to Downton, which total nightmare, because it's got to be edible. It's got to be throwable onto a silk dress. It's got to be scripted accurately. It's all these things. It's all things to every man. So I managed to get some pretend prawns that I coated in parsley, so they look very realistic. I just put a little bit of parsley, no oil. How did I do that? And then it all had to fall off. That's it. The whole plate had to fall into her lap. Violet's lap.
Oh, Violet, Dame Maggie's lap. Oh, my goodness.
So it was all a bit of a nightmare.
How did she feel about that?
I don't think she was entirely happy, but we managed to pull it off, and we didn't do it too many times. And then fortunately, we just sort of slipped a bit of cucumber. That's it. In my toolkit, I always have a cucumber and some watercress. If you're an actor and you've got to eat something all day, you're probably going to get cucumbers about it, really, because people who are professional know that once you start at the top of the scene, at the top of the day, that's what you're going to be doing all day long.
I never thought about
So if you
that.
sit down and, and I've seen it with actors who sort of not perhaps as well seasoned, and they go, oh, delicious pie, off we go, and sort of take 25, they're looking a little green around the gills. But they've started, they're going to have to finish.
You mentioned Leslie, who plays one of my favourite characters, Mrs Patmore. I also absolutely love Sophie, who plays Daisy.
Yes.
Do you have much to do with Daisy? Because Daisy's in the kitchen. Is she absolutely gorgeous?
Oh, she's divine. She's absolutely lovely. And we all kind of, I think, they'd say we sort of kind of got a kind of going friendship going, sort of in the kitchen, as it were. They'd say, what am I doing? Because Daisy also, bless her, she doesn't know much about food, because why would they? They're actresses. And the thing is, sometimes it also might be scripted that they've got to do something quite difficult. And I always say, just don't get them chopping, because an actor's got to say their lines and concentrate on that. And if you're not naturally a cook, that's quite a big ask, actually. So just try and make it simple for them.
So you liaise with the
yes,
script
and she
people.
would have a laugh. She'd go, "What you got me doing today?" And I go, "Can you do this? Look, you've got a bird here." You go, "No, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to touch it." All right, because if you're not, I'm a country girl. I'm used to sort of guts, and because that's the thing. It's about, everything had heads. It was much more real then. We had beaks and feet and all of that. So I'm being historically accurate. And she'd come and go, "Oh no, what is that? That's revolting." But of course, the viewers think it's great. But, it's a bit of a shock sort of in your face. Because actually, I think it's a vegetarian. So I think it's a bit real, sort of dead animal.
What happens if any of the actors are vegan or veggie and it's scripted that they're tucking into veal pie? Do you make something fake for them?
That is absolutely, and it's becoming frequently more and more and more. Everybody just eats air and light, and there's no...
What if you're an actress? You've got to eat air and light.
They only eat air and light. And it's things like, oh God, I won recently. So this character killed somebody, and the director wanted them eating spare ribs. So I get the phone call, and it's always really worrying when they say, "It's just a few spare ribs, Lisa. Could you just rustle some up for Wednesday?" And I go, the sentence is, it's just simple, always, is like a nightmare. So then it comes back and goes, "Oh, he's vegan." So, okay, well, could we just put them on the plate? Maybe just eats the lettuce. No, he wants them to eat the spare ribs. So if he's vegan, you've got to honour that. So we ended up, oh my God, I had to have wooden dowels steamed so they were slightly bent. I then I've got there's this stuff called seitan, which frankly I think is the work of the devil, but other people like it. I made these sort of meaty things, and I flavoured it, and for all the world, they look fantastic, actually. Even though I say so myself. And he got away with it. And he's, I dyed the dowels, painted, and then I have to paint everything. We've also had raw meat, again, back to the cream cheese. I managed to just put it through a mincer, and it looks just like raw meat. So yeah, there's many things. Cream cheese comes up a lot. I could do all sorts of
cheese. You should have shares in cream cheese.
Cream cheese, I can do all sorts of things.
And you're right, you're an artist, aren't you? I mean, it's art. It's not...
Yeah.
I know we'll talk about your background in a minute and cooking and things, and so obviously you're a fabulous cook, but this isn't always really cooking, is it? It's creating artwork.
It is. I might do a kind of ridiculous sort of, because when everything's on the table, when we have all the food on the table, and then the actors are sitting around, so they'll have their food on their dinner plate, but they're looking, if you like, with all these dishes on the table. So I can do all the dishes on the table and make those look fabulous, and they don't actually touch those. What they're eating is the food off their plate. So we'll be refreshing the food on their plate, and that's what's sitting there all day. And then, after so many takes, we just, what we call refresh, put new food on, because it's been sitting around for several hours. Because nobody eats a meal for sort of 10 hours, do they? And that's the thing. And after a while, the food on the plate is going to look really sad, and you probably don't want to eat it. So you're going to have to sort of throw it away and start again. But the stuff in the middle, looking on the table, banqueting on the table, all look fabulous. And that is all perked up and painted and stuck on the plate, because that's the other thing. I have to pin everything in and stick it onto the plate, because they might say, okay, we're now going to do this end of the table. So they'll split the table and drop the camera in, so it gives a nice close-up on whoever's at the top of the table. And so all the food on the table obviously is going to have to be moved. So the prop boys, however gentle they may be, will pick up everything, and everything's going to be carted around and moved and put over there. So it's got to be, robust enough that it's not going to wobble off the plate or collapse. It's not like just laying the table and having a meal. It's got to stay there. It's got to be used to storms. It's got to be appropriate for vegans. It's, many things.
And of course, as you said earlier, it has to be historically accurate. Yeah. How much do you enjoy the research that I presume you do to make sure it's right?
I mean, yes, because we're down here, but I've got a lifetime of books and again, wandering around finding fabulous books. books and, sort of historical books. And and also the hilarious things in the 50s. I've got some fantastic gelatine books with things that you just cannot believe, with blue mashed potato and all that. I love all that. Fanny Craddock world and all. Those are such fun. Love doing those. I did Endeavour, which is vaguely in that world, so doing cocktail sticks with, the hedgehog with the cheese and that's fun. That's just fun. And all the historical stuff. I mean, wonderful Ivan Day. You should talk to Ivan, actually. He's amazing. He's the food historian. I mean, I sort of talk to him and he knows everything. What he doesn't know is not worth talking about. And he's great. So if I get really stuck about something, I can call him, and he's so generous with his knowledge. And I've done, I've learned with him over the years. He used to sort of do lessons and things. So I love all that. And then there are people like me, food historians, that we just sort of exchange information. So there's a whole world out there of food historians and people who enjoy living and cooking in historical fashions. And I've got a fantastic friend in America, Dolly, and she's, oh God, yes. I did Alienist in Budapest, which was for Paramount. And Ranhofer is the chef who cooked at this very, very famous restaurant in New York. And this is it was amazing. It was a huge production. Because we were in Budapest, the sets were enormous, and we'd taken over this a huge building and turned it into the restaurant, because in the storyline, all the important details happened in this restaurant. And I knew that Dolly had an original copy of the book for the restaurant. So I sort of phoned her. It was like about 4 a.m, bless her. And she got up and she said, "Oh, I'm awake. It's okay. I'm going down. I'm going to look now." And she sort of read recipes to me over the phone because it was a last minute job. And I got there and I went, "Oh my God, I've got to recreate these dishes." So I was able to call her because she's got a massive collection of fantastic historical books. I mean, I've got some, but I didn't have that one.
Indulge us, because we all love a bit of Downton. What's the atmosphere like? What are the casts like?
They're lovely, actually. Yeah, they're lovely. They're lovely. I mean, I know, I'm sure Hugh won't mind. We always have a laugh about Hugh's breakfast consumption, although I think he's become vegan. I mean, because I haven't worked lately, but certainly when I was working, for the 10 or 11 years I was working, breakfast was always, because there were so many breakfast scenes. Oh my God, we had endless breakfast scenes. So sausages were his favourite, and not only his, but the crew's. So I'd have to start off at the beginning, series 1, get a couple of dozen sausages. By the time we'd done series 10 or whatever it was, I was getting sort of truckloads of sausages, because she's here with the sausages. And on this one day, they changed the scene round, because the sausages were made by my butchers, and they're really fabulous sausages. And so I had to quickly go and get some other sausages because they weren't ready. And there was complaints, "What's wrong with the sausages? Where's my normal sausage?" And I remember sending an assistant once, and I said, just get my sausages, take about 45. She went, What? I said, "No, honestly, take about 45. They will get eaten." I mean, it wasn't just Hugh eating.
He didn't eat 45 sausages. And please tell me, because I've never met him and I love him as an actor, please tell me he's as lovely as I think he is.
Yes, he is. He's absolutely. In fact, towards the end, they were so naughty. They used to come on the truck and say, "What cake have you got today, Lisa?" Because we had we had the truck, and because we did lots of cakey things. Oh God, and can I say about this one? When we were down at Goodwood, we were doing the racetrack, and there was a buffet and things. And I think there was champagne, because people shouldn't drink on set or anything. And I think there'd been a slight mix-up with the labels, with the real champagne and the non-real champagne. Because in film worlds, when they have champagne, obviously it's not alcoholic, but you have to have fizzy something. But somewhere along the way, things had got muddled up. And I think around about 3 o'clock, everybody was having a very good time.
And do you have to look after the drinks too? Does that come under your remit?
No, that's a weird one. That's props. Props do liquids. Occasionally I might deem to put a flour on their liquid, but...
So you'll do gravy and liquids, edible liquids like that, but not drink?
Not drink, because when there's a huge, dinner and there's 12 people around the table, if you can imagine, if 12 actors take a sip of their wine, supposed wine, which won't be wine, the glass has gone down. The poor prop boys have got to run around like mad, top it all up and get it to the same level. And they have this fantastic thing, which is like an infrared pen. So they mark the glass that you don't see, and then they have a light so they can see where to mark and put the liquid in back up to the top again where they've had sips. So, because otherwise, if you're watching it over a period of time, the level of liquid in the glass is going to go up and down, so it'll almost strobe.
Because you're all so good at your jobs. These are the things, of course, that we never notice. I love the stories that go on sort of behind the scenes, but it really does beg the question, you know, in your exciting film world is, how on earth did you become a food stylist? My careers officer didn't offer food stylist.
No, well, I don't think it was a job, really. It wasn't a job. I guess I'm suited because I was always an art room girl, and I went to theatre school. I went to arts educational, which was very unfashionable at the time.
Is that like Fame?
Yes. But Fame didn't exist when I was so old. It didn't exist. So I went, I can't believe I was a junior member of the festival ballet.
Right.
Which, hilarious. Anyway, I was slightly too tall in those days. So, because I mean, now I'll be all right. I'm now just too big. I couldn't possibly done it. I went off, and so I understand about theatre and drama and acting, and I understand all that. Then I went and did sort of foundation art, and then I thought I was going to sort of walk the boards, and my mother said, I think you need a second string to your bow. It's a bit like, you know, I'm going to be an actress. Which restaurant are you going to work in? So I went to learn to cook, and then found myself doing the odd jobs, bits and pieces. And then, I was doing cooking, and a lot of my friends who were actresses were my waitresses. I used to do parties, and then, you know, so it was great. They were all dancers. Everybody wanted me because they were all fabulous dancers, and they'd sort of jeté across the kind of room with their canapes and twirl, and it was all marvellous. So then I had a lovely friend who was a commercials producer, and he said, oh, God, I need a yin and yang and tomato ketchup and mustard. Can you come and do this? Not too taxing. I think I can manage that one. It would kind of open up a whole world to me. And I just thought, oh, well, that was quite fun. And it's the same sort of thing. You know, it's like mass catering. And I know about, you know, the creativity and art, blah, blah, blah. So I started off doing stills, you know, books. And at that time, we weren't, because I'm so old.
But so not old. And I was with my coffee while I'm loving your stories.
We weren't so food savvy, actually. The green baize door, which we had in Downton, was very much a divide, you know. You were either one side of the green baize door or the other. And I used to do house parties. I did used to go and cook properly for house parties, for shooting parties and things up in Scotland and all of that. And I always used to sit to the other side of the green baize door. So I got a foot in both camps, which is a bit weird. Gradually, bit by bit, the whole food explosion happened. You know, we started to have, you know, kind of world cuisine and blah, blah, blah. And people started to get more interested in food, and they couldn't cheat so much on dramas and things, because if you look back at the films of the 50s, you know, 40s and 50s, it's so obviously a plastic chicken on the table, isn't it? I mean, it's not real. I mean, it's very, you know, or a terrible cake and everything. So people became more food aware, and we didn't want to see that. And then if the actors are eating, then it all started to be a bit like, well, who's going to do the food if the actors are eating, and all these food scenes being written in? And so because I've done, you know, mass catering, that seems to be kind of logical. And then what happened is that over the last kind of, you know, 8 years, all these platforms, Netflix, Paramount, you know, they've all got these productions they've got to fill their platforms with. So the whole thing's just exploded.
You were involved in Downton from episode 1, but what were the other sort of big breaks, if you like, or the films that suddenly came along? Because you've done so much work, Lisa. It's extraordinary. I mean, you've done Cold Mountain and The Duchess. Yeah. Well, lots of different things.
Yeah, and I've done Batman and... Oh, yeah, sitting there. Oh, God, it's very varied, you know. Sitting there, oh, madness. So we're going to blow up this coffee shop. So can you make cakes? I didn't spend a lot of time making cakes, but it's eventually just going to be blown up. Sitting there kind of crouched down while this whole thing's being blown up. So that's a lot of fun. And up in, Romania. Yeah, I had to have armed guards because there were bears in the woods.
Really?
Yeah, and I'd have
What
all
were you
the
doing
food.
in Romania?
Well, that was Cold Mountain.
Was that Cold Mountain? Of
And
course
we
it was.
literally would go up the mountain. Oh, yes. That's a great story. They built, because it was quite a while that I did Coal Mountain, and they had what's called the Greens Department go out and actually grow the vegetables, build the farm, because it was sort of inexpensive and they didn't have any, pylons or anything. So it was like going back to sort of, 1780 or whatever it was set in. So they grew this farm with vegetables and things. And we had this scene. It's when Nicole comes in and she plays the piano on the back of the van, and then she comes in and she has a bowl of soup. And we had about 5 or 6 scenes to shoot that day. And we had torrential rain, like you would not believe. And because it was, the reason they shot in Romania was that it was quite inexpensive to build all the sets. So they didn't just build the front of buildings, which they often do. They actually built roofs, sides. So we had 4 walls and a roof, which was kind of nice. To get there every day was a mission. We'd go up the mountain. We literally went up the mountain as a whole massive group. And so there's no nipping off to Sainsbury's or, the local shop down there. We were there. Anything I took, I had to take up there. So the rain started. And so they said, okay, we'll flip the scene. We'll do the soup scene first. Well, the rain didn't stop. And I'm thinking, I've made this soup. This is all marvellous. Okay, I seem to be running out. And what are we going to do? So they'll finish in a minute. It'll all be fine. It'll all be fine. So we kept going and thinking, we're running out. So I said, I know. So I went out literally into the farm and dug up the vegetables that they had been growing, washed them down under the pump. Threw it in the pan, made some more soup. And Nicole said, this is the best soup I've ever tasted. And Anthony said, amazing. We're really living this. We're really living this. And we did that soup all day. And I literally just had to keep going out and digging it out of the ground, washing down the vegetables. And I have to say, it was delicious because it was all organic vegetables straight from the ground.
Delicious.
And it was she must have had about 90 bowls of soup that day.
Did she really have 90 bowls of soup?
And I'm so glad.
She must be still recovering from 90 bowls of soup.
I think, thank goodness we had a weekend off afterwards, because I just thought, I don't want to know. One of the lovely things is not knowing what lays ahead. I get a phone call and say, can you just come and do a couple of pigs in Guadalajara? Yeah, fine, okay, and I'm off. And also I get to go to fantastic places. I also did Delicious with Dawn French and Amelia Fox.
Dawn French and Amelia Fox.
And yes, that was just wonderful, down in Cornwall. And we did scenes on the beach. And we had lots of days where we were just literally cooking on the beach, paddling around. The sun was out, boiling pulpo on the beach. That was a really, really lovely job. We did 3 years of that. When we didn't get recommissioned, everybody just went into a complete demise. We almost had to have a help group because we weren't working.
Now, one thing that you did that I'm not ashamed to say I've never watched, I'm hoping you're saying I should because I'm way behind, but I never watched Outlander.
Oh, that was blood and gore and lots of animals and with heads and feet, which was brilliant in Scotland because you could get it all. So it was so easy, because a lot of my problem is, especially now, it's really difficult getting things with beaks and feet because of my butcher, who's now retired. How very dare he?
How can he possibly retire?
Because he used to keep us under-the-counter supply for me in the freezer.
Beaks and claws and stuff like that.
All sorts of things, because it's because of, butchery and the way the rules have changed. It is quite challenging. So it is game farms and things that I've now got contacts with. So up in Scotland was all marvellous. They're much more rugged.
What I'm interested in is your background, Lisa, as well, because you had quite an unusual growing up in that you grew up with racehorses, didn't you? And we were talking before we started recording the podcast. We had coffee in your gorgeous garden and you were telling me about what it was like foaling and all that kind of thing. Will you tell us a little bit about growing up and mum and dad and what they did?
I was really lucky. I grew up in Warwickshire near Stratford-on-Avon, near the river. And my parents bred racehorses, which was lovely. They did it together. My father also was a metallurgist, so he had a large company and employed people across the world, precious metals, etc. So I think that was his sort of down time to enjoy being in the countryside and doing something with my mother together. And so they did for a very, very long time. And as we grew up, I think, the horses became surrogate babies. So it was a real privilege. They foaled at home. I mean, basically they went away to stud, and then the broodmares would come home and they'd be in foal, and then they'd foal at home. And we'd have these wonderful babies at home looking, absolutely wonderful. And I was telling you the story about my mother. See, good training for filming, because it was my mother and I in our ski suits in the freezing cold, waiting for some broodmare to foal, because you've got to keep an eye on them because they start to nest, and you just want to make sure that when they're born, you don't really want to leave a racehorse foaling on their own. My mother and I would be sort of freezing down there, sitting there waiting for the mare to do something. And then it was sort of time for my father to perhaps have an eye on what's going on. He said, I'm not doing that. So he had electricity, because this is a long time ago. I mean, nowadays you'd have Wi-Fi and it'd be very easy. So this was a sort of basic CCTV, which was then rigged up to their bedroom so that they could watch the mares from the warmth of the house and your bed. But if you're walking past their bedroom, there'd be these terrible rustling of hay and sort of the odd fart of a horse. What's going on in there?
Oh, that's so lovely.
But yeah, so it was lovely. So I'm used to muck and bullets, I guess. So a lot of this job is muck and bullets, I would say. You can't be precious. My first job ever in life was driving a tractor, driving the grain trailer, actually. I wanted to go and drive the combine harvester. That was my ambition. I was never allowed. But so I'm used to kind of moving bales of hay. Well, there's a lot of lugging in this job. I don't need to go to the gym. There's a lot of carrying.
That's pretty physical, isn't it?
Yeah, it's you've got to load the car up. You just got to get it in. You got everything you can possibly think of. It all just gets shoved in, off you drive, early hours in the morning. My front door has stickers all down the back, all my Post-it notes, because there's certain things that I might put in the fridge. I've got various fridges sort of scattered around. I'm often leaving at 5:30 in the morning. Well, my brain doesn't function at 5. My goodness, I'd find out. So I'm just reliant to the Post-it notes on the back of the front door as to stuff that I've got to get out the fridge, because I can stand at the fridge and go, what am I taking? My brain's not working. Sling the last bit and off we go. And then, as you say, you're back last, and then you've got to unload the car and stick it through the dishwasher.
They're definitely long hours. Did any growing up, were there any stories that really inspired you food-wise growing up? Because obviously you've had a love of food before you got into the crazy world of film and adverts and television. You were a very good chef.
Yeah.
So did you grow up with lovely food? Was mum a good cook?
I mean, we're very much a family that sat round the table and ate and talked and made a lot of noise. And food is pretty central. If I think, sadly, my father died at the beginning of this year, and we were gathering together photographs going throughout his life to make a montage, and so many photographs way, way back, even when we were small, we're round a table. It seems to be endless meals. And it was, because it's a great, food's a great sort of knitter together of people, isn't it?
It's a knitter together. It's an equaliser. It's time to tell you stories of the day. At home, I get into trouble a bit because with my family, I try and insist that we try where we can. We're all freelance and running around. The kids are busy. Mm-hmm. But I think it's important, if you can, most nights, to sit down and enjoy your meal and chat. And not make it about just eating for sustenance, but actually that's the time where you tell your stories of the day and what's happened.
It's the interaction. It's totally the interaction. And quite often, I do get worried sometimes that people have kind of got too much emphasis on the food. It's got to be all, because, there's all this sort of television food chefs giving slight pressure. It doesn't really matter. In fact, if it's only baked beans on toast, it's about the collective. If you can cook, then marvellous. And even if you've just got something like 3 things in your repertoire, does it matter? If that's what you're good at. My mum's got a favorite. She does salmon with peppers and rice. It's delicious. How many times have I eaten this year? I can't. Probably hundreds at this point. But it's delicious. It doesn't matter. It's something she can do because she's 88. She can do it really easily.
The other thing that I learned when we were having our cake in coffee in the garden is we are lucky to have you, Lisa, aren't we? Because you had Yes, because you had quite a nasty accident growing up.
Yeah, and here we go as sort of countdown to my teeth being just about to be
rebuilt this afternoon.
Again. Yeah. It was all very lovely being with horses. They've sort of been, throughout my life. But I'm very lucky because when I was young, when I was about 13, I was supposed to be packing my trunk to go to school and I didn't. I jumped on a horse that was at home that had been sold actually and was going. So I wanted the last ride. And he was stung by a hornet and went over a 5-bar gate from a standstill because we were standing under a tree. And it went upside down and I got rather mangled, broken back, pelvis, ribs, internal bleeding, blah, 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 blah. And I got the last glance of a bash in the mouth with a hoof, which wrecked my jaw and my teeth. But amazingly, although they were dead, they stayed in my head, not going black or doing anything weird till I was in my 30s. And then I had my children and then things started to go wrong. So long story short, I've had various things and we had implants and I had a bit of a problem last year and COVID took over. So the problem got rather larger.
So you're going to be fixed.
So I'm going to be fixed in an hour and a half. I'm going to be...
Crumbs. Before you get fixed, I sort of made up a little quick fire round to end on. Dish you're most proud of or a good dish that you've done on set that you think, wow, that was amazing. Whether it be a wedding cake or a...
Oh, what? Oh, there's so many, she says, very modestly. Oh, crikey. Well, it's normally a big banquet. It's normally the collective. Oh, God, yeah. I'm actually going back to Downton.
I love going back to Downton.
For the film, God bless them, I did a really, because it was, I can talk about the film.
I saw the film.
Yeah, you talked about, so, the king was coming for supper.
Yes.
Or dinner, should I say, not supper, it was dinner, very much dinner. And then we had the royal household. And we had the royal household doing his cooking and Mrs Patmore had to go, oh yeah, we didn't talk about that.
No, go on, tell me.
The bit where Mrs Patmore was getting rid of the chef from the royal household and the butler and all the food gets flicked down the front of the shirt because it was scripted as chocolate. And of course the wardrobe department said, well, we've only got, because they're period shirts, we've only got so many and you've got to do the change round. And once we've done one flick down the front, going to have to take all the clothes off and start again. Oh, it's to do with the jacket. That's right. It was a moleskin jacket.
Yeah.
So, because it was a period piece. So it was, what are you actually going to use? So I spent 3 days sort of making this viscous mess and throwing it at a wall to see how it could stick, how long it would stick for. Could we scrape it off? And I think even at one point, my partner, I had to stand there in a jacket when I threw food at it. It's a whole other area of life. And anyway, so we did that. And then the idea was that Mrs Patmore had created this amazing food, which I did. I spent days doing. And then, listen, we put it all on the table in the downstairs, in the kitchen. And then they lined up all the cast to do the scene. So literally, they obscured everything on that table. So just between little glimpse, between two hips and somebody's shoulder, you can see a bit of roast beef or a magnificent jelly. But there's a lot going on behind those people, can I tell you?
I hope you've got some photographs of that.
I have got photographs of that because that was lovely. I think the stuff I did for Alienist was pretty epic, actually.
Was it?
Yeah, that was, because also for me in my head that you wouldn't know is the logistics of getting in, which was absolutely epic because it was such a huge building and we had to go up such enormous staircases with fridges. I can't tell you. And the heat was unbelievable. And then we were miles away from the actual set. It was quite epic, that. And we created beautiful dining rooms and ran off for amazing dishes and things. That was a bit of a struggle and a fight. That was like up 24 hours. But I was kind of
really proud of that. What about the weirdest ingredients that you've cooked with?
Well, this year's been interesting. Where are we? I can talk about this. I don't know whether I should say which production it is because it's sort of it's only just started. So it's very current.
Okay.
But I had to make edible bats.
Edible bats?
Edible bats. And I get the script. It says the girl sits up and eats the head off the crow. It's like, oh, marvellous. Okay, who dreams this stuff? So this was lovely. Oh, God. So I had to make crow's heads. And then I worked with the model maker. And she's going to rip the head of the crow in one bite. So it all got very complicated because then and bless her, thankfully she ate sugar and she ate everything, because it's when people don't eat anything, also that's why. So I could just use marzipan. So I dyed the marzipan and I used a cigaretto up the middle of the head. And for all the world, it looked like really good crow's head, really good. And then I dyed it red inside. So it's all fantastic. And then they said, we can't get crows. So we've got ravens.
So you've been to the Tower of London this week.
Yes. So can you now make it look at raven? So I got the mould. I'd done crows. I'm now going to do ravens. A raven's beak is different. So a raven's beak is sort of slightly pointed and it wasn't sitting so well. I was getting droopy raven's beak.
You definitely don't want droopy raven's beak.
And then very sweetly, we had the real ravens. And the actress had to, she was up on this sort of big plinth. And it was in February and driving snow. It could not have been colder. And Mackenzie Crook is the director, and he was very gracious. And he just said, over to you. So I had to climb up this ladder with the raven. But we had real ravens to start off with, and they have to hop over the girl because she's supposed to be dead. But what I was told by the handler was the real ravens can't see the pretend raven because they get upset. So we have to be aware of the raven sensitivity. They get very upset because it's not, because, I had to put eyes in and all sorts of sugar eyes. I'm going down, looking up sugar eyes on the website. So we had to get rid of the real ravens. And then I had to climb up the ladder in the driving and hand her this raven. And then it was great. It was fantastic. She did sit up. I've got it on. And she sat up and she just bites the head off and everything's bright pink and gory, and we got it in one take, thank God, which was amazing. And Mackenzie he just said, done. We don't need to labour that.
Do you know, it really has been such a treat coming here. We're in Wimbledon, which is a beautiful part of the world. From the very first day I met you when we went for a beach stroll in the Isle of Wight and we talked about things like this, I knew you'd be a fabulous podcast. And I think it's been fascinating, Lisa, because I think when we watch things like Bridgerton and Downton and all the different things you've done, you just don't ever think about what's gone behind the scenes with the food. But now I do, having talked to you when we watched the Downton film the other day. I kept saying to my daughter, I bet Lisa did that.
Yes,
How did Lisa do that? I wonder if that's full of gelatin.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. Totally. So thank you for having me. And it's been great coming into your kitchen because this is where a lot of that magic happens, isn't it?
Totally. It's where everything happens, as you can see. I mean, it does. No, it's been fun to talk about, actually. Unless I start rattling on, there's plenty more to say,
I think we might have to do a part 2 at some point. It'll be lovely, and I'll come and have a rifle through your jelly moulds another time if I'm allowed. We could make a jelly together, or we could make a Charlotte Russe or something together. Gosh, you obviously know that I can't cook. You don't know that I can't cook at all. That would be quite a challenge. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'd love to do that.
Quite fun.
Thank you so much, Lisa, and I hope this afternoon goes well for you too.
Oh yes, that'll be it. It'll be fine.
It'll be fine. You have been listening to food stylist Lisa Heathcote, who's been so generous with tales from the sets and sharing some of her culinary secrets from working on some of the best films and dramas. Don't forget to download our series at convex.podbean.com or search The Convex Conversation on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, or just ask Alexa. I'll be back next week with another great guest, so please do join me then.